Two up, two down. Your Ohio State Buckeyes had no problem taking care of the Arkansas State Red Wolves over the weekend. They won 45-12, and there was one player that showed up in a big way over the weekend. It was Marvin Harrison Jr. because the Red Wolves had no answer for him when he was scoring early and often on Saturday afternoon.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, September 12th in the year 2022, and today's episode is brought to you by Underdog. Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com with the promo code Locked On and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. I would also like to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we will discuss some things the defense did over the weekend in their win that I really liked, and we'll also discuss a few things that stood out that didn't go the Buckeyes' way on Saturday afternoon. But before we get to any of that, Marvin Harrison Jr., his teammates call him Route Man Marv, had me tweeting numerous times, stunting like my daddy, because that man was going off and Arkansas State had no answer for him. So we got a glimpse of this last year, played in a few games, and did a phenomenal job in the Rose Bowl last year. But this week, was a time for Marvin Harrison Jr. to really show up in a big way. It was a time for him to be a player that when you needed him in a spot when Jackson Smith-Njigba was a game-time decision, he didn't play. Julian Fleming, a game-time decision, he didn't play in the second game of the year. You need a receiver to step up. Now, a week ago, Emeka Egbuka, 9 catches, did a phenomenal job of getting open and getting loose every now and then on the football field. But would it be Egbuka again this week, or would it be somebody else that the Buckeyes have to deal with, or that the Buckeyes had to use to step up in a big way? And this week, it was Marvin Harrison Jr. Not only was he out here stunned like his daddy, but the stat sheet was filled with him. First half, a phenomenal performance, but also in the second half, he did big things as well. In the first half, he had 4 catches, 2 trips to the end zone. I believe he had over 100 receiving yards. He ended up ended the game with 7 receptions for 184 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Emeka Egbuka did a phenomenal job of getting loose as well. 4 catches, 118 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. Emeka Egbuka also caught a jet sweep going from the top to the bottom of your screen as you're watching the game. 1 carry, had 27 yards on that carry. But Marvin Harrison Jr., man, he's special. And he's special in ways, and he does things that his dad didn't do, couldn't do at times. But Marvin Harrison Jr., it's not just his pedigree that I love about him. It's the fact that he does not allow that to stop him. And that he does not allow that not to stop him, but to define the type of player that he is going to be. There were numerous times out there when Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the field that you quickly see at the line of scrimmage, the DB stands no chance. The DB can't do anything with him. And it's not just Marvin Harrison Jr. This is Brian Hartline. He teaches different releases and different things that work consistently so that when you're on the field, you're quickly saying, man, that didn't work, but that did work. But oh, hold on. But that did work. I didn't think it worked, but it actually did work. It was me who messed up. And then this move works, and this move works, and that move works. All of a sudden, you're saying the things Brian Hartline teaches in practice, those things work in the game. So all you have to do is simply do your job. And that's it. And Marvin Harrison Jr., not only was he able to get open and get on top of receivers during routes, what I mean by get on top of receivers, it's literally the moment when he gets on the line of scrimmage, and then you look at the play, you see the route, you're like, well, who is at the top? Who is over? Because at the time of at the line of scrimmage before snap, your receiver is at the bottom of the defensive back. The DB is the one on top of that route. So to get on top, you have to figure out, is it going to happen mid-route? Is it going to happen at the line of scrimmage? How are you going to do it? Marvin Harrison Jr. via swim moves, different things, different tactics, head, shakes, shoulder, shakes with your feet, stutter steps, whatever it might be, has found different ways to get on top of the receivers. These are things that Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jigba has done very well. Michael Thomas does the same things. He did it in college, does it in the NFL. Being able to get on top of your receiver, that's a problem for DBs, especially when you're playing a team at Arkansas State that doesn't have the players, the talent that the Buckeyes have. They need someone, a DB, to hopefully stay and make sure the Buckeye receiver or whoever their opposition is does not get on top of him. And Marvin Harrison Jr. did that a lot of the time. And this is one of the biggest things I think about when it comes to Harrison Jr. and his differences from him and his dad. Over the weekend, we saw the explosion of Jr., of route man Marv. Like I said, 4 catches, 2 touchdowns in the first half alone, added in 3 more catches, 1 more trip to pay dirt. And Ryan Roberts of RisingDraft.com also does some things for IrishBreakdown.com as well. Ryan came on the podcast and said he could easily see that Marvin Harrison Jr. is in his explosion, could have 40 catches, 800 yards, going throw a crazy number out there, and 10 touchdowns. We can easily see that from him, and we got a glimpse of that explosion that Ryan Roberts and Bruce Feldman of The Athletic and all the other people that follow and cover the sport, they say he could be athletic. He's a freak of nature. He's freaky athletic. And that was on full display over the weekend. And that's a big reason why the Buckeye offense moved and flowed the way that it did. Yeah, they had some hiccups. We'll discuss some more of those later on in the show. But outside of the hiccups, the biggest thing I saw over the weekend that I am taking away from and trying to build upon further in the season and over the next few weeks is Marvin Harrison Jr. finding ways to get route man Marv the ball. Because once you do that, it's going to open things up for Travion Henderson, Mind Williams, Emeka Egbuka, and the other players, the weapons that the Buckeyes have on offense. The offense was good. The offense flowed, scored 45 points over the weekend. But what did this defense do that stood out to me? We'll discuss that next right here on Locked on Buckeyes. I want to tell you about the easiest and most fun way to spice up your season. It's Underdog Fantasy and their pick'em game for college football. Just look for your favorite Buckeyes stats. Pick whether you think they'll end up higher or lower than the number in this week's game, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players for your pickup slip. Get all your picks right, and you'll take home some cold, hard cash. It's simple to get started. Just head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app. Sign up with promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, get $100 free. That's UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code LOCKEDON. I challenged you guys last week. You guys are coming through, but we're not to the goal that we have set for this podcast. Go to YouTube, search Locked on Buckeyes. Hit that subscribe button. We have a goal to hit 2,000 subscriptions by the time the Buckeyes play Wisconsin on September 24th at kickoff. Let's be at that goal. Buckeyes fans, you guys are known for coming up in a big way, showing up and showing out. And let's do the same thing with this podcast on YouTube. It's free. Just hit the button. It says subscribe. You'll be glad when you do. So there are numerous times that this new defense the Buckeyes have, and a lot of it is new. A lot of it is more so just like proper coaching, which is still new because, well, last year was Kerry Combs' first time being a D coordinator in his tenure of being a football coach. And, well, we quickly saw that he was over his head, and maybe I don't say maybe the hire he was not the right person to hire for that job. And so we now have Coach Jim Knowlton. He's a defensive coordinator, a linebackers coach, and he's my kind of guy. He's a guy that's all ball all the time, doesn't turn it off, and he has that old school look, old school mentality where it's no nonsense. Let's just get to work and get things done. So with Coach Knowles in here now, Coach Coombs out, well, he was really out of D coordinator prior to that, but then some of the issues you saw earlier on with Ohio State's defense last year early in the season with Coombs as D coordinator, you still saw some of those later in the season, so you're really wondering, what's going on? What are the coaches teaching these guys? So Jim Knowles is in. We all know there are going to be different wrinkles. And I found myself numerous times in passing situations sitting here saying, drop, drop, drop. Now, you might be saying, Jay, what are you saying? Why are you saying drop to yourself? And I watched the game over the weekend with my girlfriend, and she's getting acclimated to being a Buckeyes fan, and she's quickly saying, oh, this game's going to be a breeze. Why are they committing so many of these issues? Why are there these issues? Why are they made some changes from game 1 to game 2, and those things are on Front Street. I do try to discuss some of these things during the game. But as I was sitting there with my girlfriend watching the game, one thing quickly stuck out. The Buckeyes are not afraid to drop D-ends when they're showing blitz, the blitz of Eichenberg and Chambers. You can have Ike and Chambers and still Chambers walk up into the A gap, or one to the A gap, one to the B gap. And I don't care if it's Tuimoloau at the bottom, Harrison at the bottom, Jack Sawyer at the bottom. I don't care who it is. Whoever's down there at the bottom, that's going to be a tricky spot for the opposition because that tackle has no idea what the Buckeyes defense is going to do. Will Harrison, Tuimoloau, or Sawyer, will they drop into coverage? Will they go and rush? If they do rush, will it be Eichenberg and Chambers? Will they both blitz? Will they drop back? Will they bring up Hickman on the outside? So it's 3 guys that have walked up on the line of scrimmage, a safety and 2 backers. Will the 3 guys that have walked up on the line, will those guys drop and go back into coverage? Will 1 guy stay and 2 guys come back? Will 2 guys stay and 1 guy come back? Will all 3 go? If all 3 go, does that mean that the DN on the opposite side, the bottom of your screen, on the offense is right? Does that mean that he is going to come in and rush? Is he going to drop back into coverage? No matter if it's the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen, does not matter. That DN position, and I don't care if you're in a 2-point stance or a 3-point stance, it don't really matter. When you don't know what the opposition is going to do, if you're an opposing offense, and as James Blackman, former Florida State quarterback, has played a lot of football, I believe his 5th year playing college football, 2nd year at Arkansas State. We talked about it at the end of last week. He's comfortable in this offense, but at the same time, being comfortable is one thing. Being able to know what's going to happen when you see 2 guys walked up on the line, or 3 guys walked up on the line, or 2 guys walked up, and then a DN or the 2-point stance, or maybe you're seeing a 3-line front, but then Sawyer is kind of looped around in a 2-point stance in the B gap, which you saw a lot, which is more of a 3-3-5 look than a 4-2-5 look, which also, by the way, some of y'all in the offseason, you said your boy was wrong for saying that it was going to be occasionally a 3-3-5 look. Now, granted, the stat sheet will say that's a 4-2-5. But if you don't look at the stat sheet, you look up there and see 3 linemen, 1 set nose, and the other 2 guys that are in the DN spot for a 3-line front, you will say, oh, that's a 3-3-5 look. But all of a sudden, the guy who's in the B gap standing up, that's a DN. Trust me. You just watch the film. It'll gladly help you know what's going to happen coming up in the season. I had to get off of that. I had to get off my chest. People said I was crazy. I'm not crazy. Just watch football, watch the film. It'll let you know what's going to come up in the game. But all of a sudden, when the defense has no idea what you're going to do, as that D in that position specifically, that's going to muddy up things for the center guard, center connection about figuring out who's going to take the tackles, who's going to take the backers, which one comes back in communication that way. That caused so much havoc and so much confusion and chaos during the game because they had no idea what was going to happen. And that's one thing I like about the wrinkles in this game. Yes, Arkansas State's a lesser opponent. Yes, everybody knows that Arkansas State cannot stand a chance against the Buckeyes. That's no problem. But it's going to be something that now when you put that out there, you have Toledo next week, which should be a bloodbath, should be a blowout. You have teams coming up down the road, Wisconsin and Iowa, 2 really disciplined teams. You're going to have Michigan State team, which is, I believe, a top 10 team in one poll, and the number 11 team in another poll. You're going to have teams coming up down the road. You're going to have Penn State. You're going to have Michigan. You're going to have other teams in here that are really talented. And all of a sudden, you're going to have to realize what wrinkles can I use now that will help me down the road? And what wrinkles can I show now that'll help me down the road be more successful in those games against teams that have so much film to watch to try to figure out how I'm going to react on defense. And this is all primarily going to be more so the passing situation. Now, you may see sometimes two backers walked up and then two guys blitzing, or Eichenberg blitzing. Not Eichenberg blitz up the middle, kind of a loop around thing, or delayed blitz. That has worked so well for the Buckeyes. But knowing that DM position and not knowing if he's going to drop back or stay, and knowing you're walking up two guys, sometimes three, and that really confuses the opposing quarterback, man, talk about a clock that a quarterback has. Talk about a way to speed that clock up. The confusion that the Buckeyes are showing on defense and the wrinkles with simply that DN spot and not knowing if he's going to drop or stay. That's what I love. I love it, not only because it's new, but because you don't really see many people in college utilize that, and they utilize it as often as you'd think. You may see guys in the NFL that are dropped back, DNs dropping back into coverage, but that's not something that you're going to see a lot of, because that's not a normal thing for defensive ends and guys there. You see more nowadays. You do see guys that end up at the combine. They're practicing these drills. My brother was someone when he was preparing for his pro day, he was practicing linebacker drop drills and DN drop drills. Why? Because your new age DN, a lot of times in the NFL, needs to know how to do it. They're not always going to do it, but they need to know how to do that and how to get it done. Maybe, just maybe, this is a better way to prepare Ohio State DNs for the future. D tackles, D linemen for the future. Because if you can play a nose, a one tech, and a three tech defensive tackle, if you can play a stand up D end at a 2-point stance and a 3-point stance D end, think about how valuable you are in the future, and how many people that are in the NFL will look at you and say, yeah, that's the guy I want on my team. Why? Because of the versatility we saw in college. It makes him be a better asset and someone that we can utilize in more ways in the National Football League. That's just one wrinkle. We'll discuss more about this game tomorrow and over the next few days, because, man, Arkansas State, 45-12 win is amazing. But that's not the end-all be-all. There are a lot of things that happen in this game that the Buckeyes can build off right now going into the game with Toledo in a few days from now. Now, we talked about it, Emeka, Egbuka, Marvin Harrison Jr., talk about the defense. Those are all positive. But what did the Buckeyes do that made me scratch my head and maybe even yell a little bit because things weren't going right? We'll discuss those next right here on Locked On Buckeyes. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job posted minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, so your network can help you find the right people to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Your Buckeyes over the weekend, they did a few things that were a little puzzling to me. And you may be somebody that is like me that might say, that didn't make sense, or what did the Buckeyes do that in the moment you were saying, Jay, that just wasn't right? Well, one of them was very early in the game. I won't say early in the game, first quarter, James Blackwell was not going to shy away from picking on Denzel Burke. Now, Denzel Burke started as a freshman, was thrust into the starting lineup last year when it was a Minnesota game when Seven Banks was a game-time decision. Had a lot of game-time decisions going into the season. And Jigler got hurt during the season. Fleming continues to be hurt, unfortunately be hurt. But this is the second year. I'm thinking game-time decisions or people that are injured going into the season, things just seem a little odd. Now, granted, There are less of those this year than there were last year. But Denzel Burke was not going to be someone that was going to be able to just be someone that could skate by, not get much attention. No, he got the attention. James Blackman realized Denzel Burke committed a pass interference. That's not right. Committed another pass interference. Okay, keep picking on him. I believe it was in the second quarter by this time. They went to Burke. I don't know if it was Champs Fleming, the 5'5", 155 little guy, wide receiver the Red Wolves had. But it was a receiver at the top of your screen, did a double move on Burke, and Burke got broke off, y'all. Like that double move, that hesitation, that hezzy they got hit with, boy, I want to say Burke's hand hit the ground because that hezzy broke him off. Next thing you know, a lot of separation. Receiver catches the ball from Blackman, moving the ball down the field. It wasn't just that. There were missed tackles. His technique was just really, really poor. And I'm not going to put that on the coaches. Burke knows better. Sometimes those things happen. But when you get beat once, stick to your guns, stick to what you do. You get beat a second time. That third time they're going to keep picking on you, there's a good chance you're going to make a few issues and have a few issues that come up that get put on Front Street simply because you're kind of getting outside of what makes you you. And when you get outside of what makes you as a player, you might keep getting exposed, and Burke just didn't have the best game of his life. And when you're playing on an island, a lot of times like you are as a corner, you get beat, the whole world sees it. Another thing was defensive back tackling. Burke is included in this conversation, but DB tackling was bad. A lot of it from the linebackers, Eichenberg, Simon, Chambers, they were good. Mike Hall, I do believe, leads all FBS players in tackles for loss. And I mean, once he gets his hands on you and the big old paws, you're coming down to the ground. And so I don't really put this much on the front seven, but the defensive back tackling was poor. Poor. You saw Ransom, once Latham Ransom came in, his tackling is good. Really, really good. Now, sometimes his pad level is a little too high, but DB tackling was poor. A lot of it was arm tackles. A lot of it was not breaking down, not breaking down and kind of leaning a little bit instead of breaking down, getting your feet under you and then really understanding, hey, if he goes this way, this is how I respond. If he goes to my left, this is how I respond. No, it was lunging. Just really poor technique with the tackling. DB tackling needs to get better. But another one was the Buckeyes had issues with this 5'5", 155-pound receiver in Champs Fleming. And I want to pinpoint this one and close this one out because the Buckeyes can't allow this to continue because you just don't know. You never know when you're going to have a team that has a shifty receiver. Now, granted, I don't really care if he's 5'5" or 5'8". I don't care if he's 155 or 180. I don't care. You get these fast little guys that are out here that are playing the slot, but they're not just playing the slot. They're playing, they're coming in motion. They're getting jet sweeps and bubble screens and quick slants, and they're finding different ways to get the ball to them quickly, but get them the ball quickly in space, create a little space before they get the ball, and the next thing you know, he's skedaddling and skadoodling. He's moving around, and he's trotting around you. Next thing you know, what you think is supposed to be a 2-yard gain is a slip tackle because he's so shifty and elusive. He goes for 15, 20 yards. The chains keep moving. You got to figure out ways to stop little shifty guys. Better DB tackling, better tackling as an entire unit. It's going to help you with guys like Champ Fleming that have his skill set because you find ways to stop that. You find ways to stop guys like him. The Buckeyes might be able to accomplish the goals they have set for this year. Guys, I love this stuff. I love wins, and I love coming back to this show and talking about good things that happen at Ohio State in a win over the weekend. Guys, you can follow me on Twitter at jsteven07. You can also send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Buckeyes YouTube page as they're trying to hit 2,000 subscriptions really, really soon with your help. While you're at the YouTube, it's free, by the way. While you're at the YouTube, hit that bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live. Also, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, the Odyssey app, wherever you get your fine podcast, the audio way, subscribe to Locked On Buckeyes there as you will be able to help the show grow and get alerted every time a new podcast goes out. In the meantime, check out Locked On Big Ten. Make that your second listen every day. Nate Dickinson, the host. It takes you around the conference in 30 minutes every single day with a local expert. Locked On Buckeyes, just like Locked On Big Ten, they're both free and available wherever you get your fine podcast. A 45-12 win, 2-0. It's a great way to start the season. It's fun to come on here, talk about the Buckeyes doing big things on the football field. We'll do more breakdown. We'll continue to break down this game from over the weekend tomorrow right here on Locked On Buckeyes.